You know, the best part of that whole conversation with Dan and Seaton and Fritzy, I was listening. I was in the car listening to that whole breakdown of Dan saying, we can't do this. We can't do this. I bet you weren't expecting to hear my voice or see my face this morning, but Dan is a little under the weather. I don't know. There are some reports out there that maybe his World Cup watch party got a little bit too aggressive. So I got the call late last night from Paulie to get in the big chair, which is awesome. Absolutely love my guys, the Danettes. I think most of you by now know me. I join the show every Monday. Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, and more importantly, noted World Cup soccer expert.
That's why we called.
That's really, Paulie, be honest. When you found out Dan was under the weather, you thought, who do we know that can just nail an opening segment talking about the USA's win over Iran? Who out there is truly a soccer expert?
Right. Now, do you want me to be honest, or do you want me to keep rolling with what you're going with right now?
Be honest.
Yeah, you know what's funny, Ross? You're the kind of guy who's perfect for this because you're not a day-to-day soccer guy, but anytime like USA is involved or it's a big match, I know you hunkered down yesterday and watch this match. I know you, and I know how much you love sports.
Well, so there's a lot of different things to say about this, right? So number one, I'll have you know, I was on the Wyomissing under 8, under 10, and under 12 A teams.
Let's go.
Okay.
A team.
Back in the 80s.
Goalkeeper?
Back in the 80s. And it was always a big debate. Is he center mid or is he center full? Okay. Because those were the bad positions where you put your big bad guy.
Yeah.
I thought soccer was fun. I loved it. I mean, until I played football, but that's a whole other story. But I will say this. Here's the other thing that's very cool. Do you know that Pulisic, I live in central Pennsylvania. I live 10 minutes from where Pulisic grew up. So it's such a big deal around here, Christian Pulisic, and how well he's been able to play, which, by the way, that he might have taken, let's just get this out there right now.
Yeah.
He might have taken the all-time most valiant nut shot in the history of nut shots.
That's why we booked you today, Ross. Let me tell you something. The minute Pulisic got hit in the nuts while scoring the monstrous goal, we said, no one knows groin humor, except for Dan Patrick and us, better than you.
Listen, I know a lot of people that have taken some bad shots to the privates, the nether regions. We got to figure out how many different terms we can use to describe where Christian Pulisic got hit. We're not going with pelvic bruise, okay? Not on this show.
That's medical.
Not on my watch. We're not going with pelvic bruise, okay? But think about this. How bad do you have to get hit in the gonads to go to the hospital? I mean, how bad? Look, I don't know why it hurts so much, but every guy listening knows there's no pain like that. There's no pain like getting hit in your boys down there. But that's like 5, by the way. That's 5 different references I've already come up with.
Respect
for that, okay?
We're 3 minutes into the show and you've already hit 5. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so when you take a shot to the sack, that's 6, like that. I mean, it takes the wind out of you. It makes you double over in pain. But who's going to the hospital? And what do you even say when you get to the hospital? I'm dying to know, what did they examine? What did they scan? Did he get an MRI?
I think he got an X-ray to see if he had like a broken pelvic bone or something like that. But initially when he went down, usually soccer players, when they score a goal, it's so rare, they just run around, and that felt like a real injury because he not only didn't get up, he was down for 5 or 6 minutes.
Right. So here's my question. And Seaton, I know you're the soccer guy because I listen and watch the show all the time. And by the way, I am one of those people in life, I freely admit the things I don't know. Okay. So I admit my ignorance. I did not realize, Seaton, that they'll give you a couple minutes to be injured on the field and take care of you. But then after a certain amount of time, I don't know how much time it is, they push you off out of bounds and then they just start the game.
Yeah.
And the coach is looking down at the player and the trainer being like, what do you think? Should I sub a guy in?
Right.
Or is he going to be able to come back? And they just play with 10 guys. The U.S. twice in that game played with 10 guys.
Yep.
And in my mind, if they gave up a goal in one of those 2 times, Seton, when they were down a man, I would have lost my mind. Let me just tell you, if you play with 10 in the NFL, they're going to score a touchdown, probably. Like, especially if you do it for like multiple, like if they know ahead of time you only have 10 guys, that's a problem. So, Seton, I got a lot of questions. So, first question is, how much time are you allowed to like have on the field with the injury before they like push you off out of bounds and say, okay, we're just playing?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a set time, but the referee will move you along. Like it's depending on. There's some times where if it's a head injury, the game has to stop and you have to check out the person's head. But other ones, it's sort of like, all right, man, you good? Because either you have to get up and walk off on your own, or the stretcher's coming out and they're carrying you. But we got a game to get on. So yeah, I don't know that there's necessarily a set time, but it's a very real thing. Yep.
If and I've seen this before, the stretcher can carry them off, but they can still come back in the game, right?
Yeah. And
sometimes I guess I feel like
I wonder
forget the other kid's name. Was the other kid that got hurt Sargent? He looked like he hyperextended his knee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like in both those instances, they should have just kept like writhing in pain or whatever until they were okay, so that the U.S. didn't have to be a man down.
Well, yeah, so there's sort of a strategy there where, like, obviously flopping is a big thing in soccer, right? But people will, towards the end of a game, if you're winning, 1-0, 2-0 or whatever, and all of a sudden you're, my leg cramped up, and dudes will go down and they need to get their legs stretched out. That's, all of that time wasting is part of the strategy at the end of a game. So that's why there's such a move to like, okay, if you're okay, then just you got to move off the field though now, because now we're wasting too much time. You could get carded for wasting too much time, things like that.
A lot more to get to though with the soccer stuff. I mean, we'll get to the college football playoff, but that goal was amazing. I mean, that was a really impressive goal. And see, he's our best player since who? Ever?
I don't know. Well, maybe since Dempsey. He might be our best player since then.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's up there with like the Clint Dempseys and Landon Donovans. He just has to. He's played at a high level with his club team with Chelsea. He's played in Champions League and they won that. But now with the U.S. team, with the national team, this is where he's sort of making his domestic legacy, because he hasn't done. This is his first World Cup too.
So when Dempsey comes on, should I be like, dude, Dempsey? Pulisic is so good. I've never seen a U.S. guy this good. Have you, Dempsey?
Don't open with that. Don't open with that.
So what's a funny sort of like subplot to this whole thing is that they're calling this generation of the U.S. team, they're hinting on whether it could be a golden generation or not, which is just like a bunch of really young talent that then you see stay together for 2 or 3 World Cups from now, right? They stay together and theoretically it's your best chance to win. But I know that there's a lot of guys who came before this quote-unquote golden generation that are like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. They're not that good, And so there's a little bit of like legacy defending happening with the older generation, like Alexi Lawless and, Clint Dempsey and those guys.
Well, these guys have to prove it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They have to go out there and show it. And so they're on to the round of 16 now, which my question on that is like, how often have we, and I don't know if you guys know this off the top of your head, how many times have we made it through to the round of 16? And what's the furthest we've ever gone?
They've made it a handful of times to the round of 16. They've gone to the quarterfinals, which is the next round after that. I know once or twice. They just did it, man, I forget which World Cup it was, but in the 2000s on, they've made it to the round of 16, and I know the quarterfinals at least once.
So it's funny because I literally only watch soccer for the World Cup, and I only watch when the U.S. is playing. Like I've tried to watch other countries going against each other. I'm just not interested. Like what is interesting about it is it's our country, right? Like it's our country against other countries. We want them to represent us well. And it's like the one team we can all cheer on. Like Paulie likes the Bears, Fritzy likes the Broncos. Seton likes the Patriots. We all like the U.S. But at least I hope. We all like the U.S. We can all root for them. It's awesome. Does that bother you at all, Seton, as a soccer guy, that like the rest of us sort of jump on the bandwagon, all of a sudden we're into it? Or do you like that, like, okay, finally everybody else is talking about the sport that I really like?
No, yeah, I think it's awesome. I love that people get really into it because there will be sort of a carryover effect, especially with this World Cup and our team being good. And now the next World Cup in 4 years is here in the United States. And all of these kids are going to be hitting their prime. They're going to be, 27, between, say, 24 and 28 years old. So that they should be really good then. I think it's awesome having people. I just don't like when people are like, just really critical of the game. You know what I mean? Where it's like, this is
that don't
stupid.
that do the Fritzy thing.
Yeah, there's the Fritzy, like that drives me nuts. You know what I mean? Where it's like, all right, like you don't have to like the game, but
So the game's just going to end abruptly like that? We don't get a little 2-minute warning or countdown? We just have no idea. It's over. It's over. Wait, I was just going to kick it.
Hey, Fritzy.
I was just going to kick it.
In fairness to you, okay, I will say, the whole playing with a guy down thing, but like it's undetermined how long you get to have the injury on the field, but then you come off. That is strange to me. And I'll always, at least now with the injury time, they tell you 7 minutes or 3 minutes, or yesterday it was 9 minutes. Back in the day, they didn't even I don't remember that they would tell you how much injury time there was.
But
So
Ross,
at least now you have a little bit of a better Paulie.
Ross, you played football and you played football your whole life, so you know football like better than anybody, as much as. But can you imagine like a European person watching football for the first time, American football, going, okay, so they play for 4 seconds, and then they have a 45-second meeting, and then they play for another 6 seconds, and then they have another 40-second meeting, and then they could just swap people in anytime. There's 10 people swapping and completing the process, and it's almost like a legalese you got to know football. Like soccer is so much more basic in compared to that. Even the offsides rules are basic.
Well, it's why soccer is the most popular sport worldwide. Anybody can play soccer in any country, anywhere, right now, right? Like there's a net. There's you have a ball, you kick it. Everybody can conceptually understand. Football's way, way more complicated. By the way, Marvin, do me a favor and keep track of all the different phrases that we, or at least I, use to keep track of exactly where it is that Christian Pulisic got hit. And also, can you track how many different ways I pronounce his last name?
We're at 3.
I think I'm up to 4 right now.
Okay.
I think I've done Pulisic. Like
some people go the
Pulisic.
They go
There's a Pulisic.
Yeah.
So he literally, it's 10 minutes away from where I live is Hershey, Pennsylvania, and so as you might imagine, that even takes the World Cup stuff to like another level, right? We all have pride in the U.S., but then like when it's like, and now by the way, everybody knows him. Everybody's like, oh yeah, one time I was at Starbucks and he came in. Like now everybody knows him. It's hilarious.
He should just go by Christian, like Ronaldinho. He should just go by Christian.
Yeah, Marvin.
With Pulisic, was this like a LeBron type thing where at 15 they knew he was going to be the guy out in that area, or was it just he came out of nowhere?
No, they knew. Yeah, he was. I mean, Seton knows this probably. How old? I don't know how old he is now, but like they've been talking about him for like 8 years. I mean, they've been talking about him since he was like 15, 16 at the world level.
Yeah, I think at 16 he had gone over to Germany and that's when he started with Borussia Dortmund. And by then he had already, gone on trial with Chelsea and some other places. So by the time he was 16, he was already taken off.
So what's so interesting to me about that is that's common in Europe, right? Like they got Ronaldo when he was like 12 years old or 6 years old or whatever, and he started training or whatever. But we don't have sports like that in the US. Like, can you imagine like you got your 14-year-old kid and they're like, hey dad, I'm evidently really good at soccer. I'm gonna go peace out to Germany next week. Like, what? You gonna do what? You got a junior high game next week against East High. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm skipping high school, Dad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally different model, and it's really, really wild.